Joe Holman lost over 160 pounds by eating one meal a day. All right. Well, thank you so much, Joe, for being here, for sharing your story. Why don't you introduce yourself and tell people what you do?
All righty. Thanks so much for having me. I am 44 years old. I'm Joe Holman. I'm 44 years old. I am between San Antonio and Austin. I am in risk management by my day job, but part time, the other part of that time, I consult and I help people be the best version of themselves. I teach them how to lose weight. I work with bingers. I work with the overweight and sometimes the morbidly obese. And I kind of went from really heavy to not heavy at all. I had a 54-inch waist. I'm at a 34. I wore a 4X shirts. Now I'm into large and XL because of my sleeve length. And I dedicate a portion of my time to helping people find their better version. So sometimes that means no stopping eating, and that's what I help people do with intermittent fasting.
So, how is it that you've had success with weight loss? Like, where did you start? How much have you lost? How long did it take? And just what's your general plan?
It took me 11 months, just over 11 months, to lose 173 pounds. And I started June 1st of 2013. I was sitting in my living room watching some coverage on the Weather Channel of a tornado in Oklahoma, and I had just done what I had done for so long. I had eaten uh, tons of food. I felt awful. I could not play with my 5-year-old, and who at the time was 5 years old. We're 5 years looking back now. It's hard to comprehend that, but I realized that I felt terrible. My blood pressure was untreatable. I was at about 179 over 115, 135. So my blood pressure meds had quit working. And I went to the doctor and I got the same spiel about maybe losing some weight, but I became very angry when I heard that. So I didn't do very well at all in terms of people telling me, you might cut down. I was 363.4 pounds at my heaviest, which my mother suspects I was a little heavier, but I know for sure I was 363.4. In 2012, I went on the scale, 2013, and that's what it topped off at. And that was in the morning with no clothes. So, if in the day I probably was a little bit heavier. I was a binger since I was younger, and I used to never have a weight problem as a child. At about 9 years old, 8 years old, I started having trouble getting along with some of the kids in my school. And so I would go home and eat. I would go and get a bag of Imperial brown sugar and I would spoon it right down. I would go and get a bag of Doritos, nacho cheese chips, and I would just finish the bag. I started doing that, and I had a traumatic experience with a teacher who literally stuffed my head in a trash can. That was actually years earlier, at about 5. I was a difficult kid because I didn't have a lot of the social skills at the time, and I went home. I didn't tell my mother. I finally told her, but I went home and I would eat, and I always felt good when I ate. So I went out of my way to binge eat on various occasions. But I was a kid. It kind of went away. I didn't have to think about it for a while. I got in junior high. I had some pones. I started to get a little bit of a belly, but it wasn't real to me until high school. I started to gain weight and experiment with crash diets. And of course, I would take the weight off, I would put it on, but the same thing remained. I would go out and I would eat, and I would go to school, and I would find those kids who were selling it used to be they would sell the Sprees and Reese's and Kit Kat bars, and I would spend all my lunch money on just candy. And I would eat candy, and then I would go home, and mom would cook dinner, and I would eat ridiculous amounts of food. And I would repeat the cycle until I got into college. I got out of high school, I was 190 pounds because I had crash dieted. I went all the way another year later to 224. When I graduated college, I was at 248. When a year into my professional field, I was 295. And from there, each year started to get worse. I had gotten married. She didn't make things any better. She also had a weight problem, and together we were a bad combination. And by the time 2003 rolled around, 2004, I was about 325. And the next few years, I topped out at around 345. I continued to eat, binge eat. I would stop at restaurants and eat and not be satisfied, and I'd stop at another restaurant. So imagine stopping at Pizza Hut and then stopping at a Chinese buffet. So I've already eaten a pizza and decided that didn't do it for me. I would stop somewhere else. I would go and drive by a place by my house that was Japanese automotive repair shop. Well, that made me hungry for Asian food. You see how my mind would connect with all of these silly stuff. And Dad, when I was younger, would bring home bags of Chips Ahoy. That connected that. So I had all these little connections that I would make. So I would drive by the Chinese buffet. I would top off with about 8 plates of food. I would do the same thing with Mexican restaurants in the area. And we're in South Texas, so you can get good Mexican, good Tex-Mex all over the place. We would do that. I would do that, and then there came a point my blood pressure became such an issue that I finally realized that I would eventually have to do something. But this is what I call the sleep. It's when you don't care. You say, I'll worry about that later. It's like guys I work with, young guys who are putting on their weight, because it's not real to them. It's not real that you're actually going to have to stop and do something about that at some point. So I topped off, I finally hit up to 360 plus, and I was having trouble I could not keep cool. I would have to sit in front of an AC. I could not take a single flight of stairs. It was really embarrassing. I actually started a new risk management job, and I could not take the stairs with the rest of the orientation class. I was so embarrassed. I had literally fell down against a wall because I was so breathed out. And I said, I've got to do something. So a few years passed, and I was back on the couch in where I started to describe 2013, and I realized how much of my life I had wasted to just being huge and eating. And here I was sucking down a Big Red with 2 plates of Mexican food. And I said, watching this weather coverage, I said, I will never again be a slave to food. I'm only going to allow myself 1 meal a day because I know that at least I won't get heavier, and I'll probably lose at least something. No game plan. I had no plotting, no clever investigation. I had done Atkins. I had done low carb. I had done vegan. I had done things back in the 2000s to try to curb the weight loss with varying degrees of success. And I didn't care. I just knew that I wasn't going to be a slave to food. So 24 hours rolled around. I decided to have 1 hamburger that day for my meal. And I did. I stopped eating. And I got really hungry. But I said, it ain't going to happen. And Joel Holman is the type where I can completely explode on the scene. When I make a decision, it's made. That's part of being a direct communicator. Hey, it's time to kick things into gear. Well, I finally found the strength and the rationale to take control of my eating. And so I did. My mother suggested I have 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar with my meal. And I put it with the juice, and so I had the juice in that hamburger. That was it. I was done eating. Next day rolled around. I think Mom cooked something. I was out of a job at the time. I was switching jobs, and so I was really depressed, and I had been divorced since '09, so I wasn't very optimistic about life. So that's a double whammy. I felt terrible. Next day rolled around. The next day, I was so hungry by the end of week 1. I share on some of my YouTube videos that I literally was watching cat videos and MMA videos and stuff to distract me from the fact that I was so hungry. I so wanted to cave and go out and splurge. I didn't. And I knew I wasn't going to because I decided. 2 weeks rolled around. I realized this isn't so bad at all. And then finally a month rolled around. And my insanely low-calorie routine had been adjusted to meet me. I decided to go ahead and fill up 1 plate. And I made from that the 1 plate rule. All of this talk about the 1 plate rule you see online really comes from my channel. I kind of made that popular. There wasn't anything back in 2015 online about OMAD. You didn't see very much, if anything. And so I started to do that, and by a month I was able to say, I can do this forever. By then I had dropped more than 25 pounds, and I felt much different. I ran into a series of plateaus after that, but I didn't stop because I realized I couldn't. Otherwise, everything would repeat, and it would be just like I had done before. Kept going, and then the months started passing by. I broke through my first big plateau at about 324 pounds. Took 6 weeks and to finally start losing again. And then after that, all the other plateaus became pretty short-lived. Before I knew it, I was under 300 pounds. I got up and I was at 107. I had not seen anywhere in the twos for more than a decade. I was so excited. I had a new job by then. And lo and behold, by, what was it, April of 2014. So we went from June 1st, 2013 to April of 2014. I was at 201 pounds. I had beaten all of that. And over through August of 2014, I ended up at my lowest weight of 185. And everybody kept saying, and had been saying since I hit 200, they said, you look a little bit too thin. We want you to stop. And I didn't listen until finally I looked at myself in the mirror. I said, yeah, I do look. I'm starting to look too. I'm 6'4", so it doesn't look the same.
Right.
And as a result of that, I said, I'm going to go ahead and allow myself to gain about 10 pounds. So since then, I have been in the neighborhood of 195 through about 205 to stay, give or take. And to this day, I have actually decided to go up a little bit more, back into about 210, because my goal now is muscle, is muscle gaining.
Right.
As I get a bit older, your goals change. And so I did not plan on any of this coaching or anything that I do now. I had a lady, I posted by chance some pictures on MyFitnessPal of my success. And they're actually, the thread is still up, but the pictures aren't active anymore. I got bombarded with friend requests overnight. I got bombarded with people asking for help. And I said, no, this isn't how it's done. What is everybody doing? And through somehow, some way, I let a lady convince me to get on Skype. And she was 400 and something pounds. She was from the UK. And she got into a fad diet of eating ice cream and milk for weight loss 5 times a day. I don't know how. I've not even heard of that.
I want that diet.
Yeah, no, but she was so constipated and she was in tears, and she had only gained weight. And I told her, I said, go get some black beans and a couple of apples, and we'll talk tomorrow. We got on Skype, and I said, here's what you do. Give yourself one plate of food, anything you want, anything that you can make a meal out of. If you juice of your choice or water, put 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar in it. Do that every day for the first month. And then after that, maybe twice a week. And then I said, the only thing you should cut out or really worry about cutting down on, make sure it fits on the plate, or direct sugars. So she did that. The weight skyrocketed off. And that's the wrong analogy. It avalanched off. It came down very quickly. Before you knew it, she was out of the 300s, and she could not stop crying. She thanked me. I said, do that every day, and you'll get to a point where you have to start adding food back in, because you won't be able to do that forever. Allow yourself maybe one splurge day every 2 weeks. And I didn't plan any of this. This was just as I went. So she was the first client, and she managed to lose. I think she was probably 21 at the time. So this was a girl who was, and she rocked out. She ended up losing 300 pounds, and she's down. So from there, I had people contact me, and I realized I couldn't keep doing this. I kept telling the story, and I said, I'm going to have to get something out of this. So I said, I talked to people who were, time vampires. So I said, okay, I'll go ahead and set up a website and did a YouTube channel, and that blew up more or less. And I did what I had to help people out, and that's kind of where it has been today. It consumes somewhat of a portion of my time, and the only reason I charge anything is because I have to be able to regulate how much of myself I invest.
Right.
But it developed. The OMAD plan, it developed, and I had time with myself to test it out. I also had time with others to test it out. And since then, people I've started a revolution, and that was the purpose of my channel, to start a revolution in self-control, because that's people are always looking for shortcuts, like I was. People are always looking to buck the system. They're looking to try to not be hungry. Well, that's really not possible. You're going to have to keep the balance. And one of the biggest influences with me was the bear, the North American grizzly. Everybody's talking about different diet gurus. My guru was the weight loss master known as the bear, because they're the nature's best. And I looked at the bear on a Discovery Channel. I said, that's there. That's what I can do. And I found a way through the OMAD cycle to do what the bear naturally does. You have feast and you have famine. They feast crazily, but then they come to a point where they level off and they don't eat. And I started to notice completely by chance that the bears in captivity, along with other animals like primates, our cousins, our chimps, when they're overfed, they get sick. The bears in captivity, the apes in captivity, all animals really. Animal husbandry teaches you have to not overfeed them because they'll die, because they have lost touch with the natural balance to feed and stop. And what stops them is nature. So what I learned to do through one meal a day is you have to recreate the famine that nature would give you, because our hunter-gatherer ancestors didn't have a convenience store where you can get Ho-Hos and Kit Kats and Twix, and didn't have Taco Cabana where you could stop and get tacos, or a Mexican restaurant. You had to create all of that, which of course at the time didn't exist. So you had to chase your dinner, you had to kill it, you had to cook the best you could, if you could, and then you had to search a long time, and you might go days without eating. You might get once a day if you're lucky. So if you could recreate that, I realized you could succeed, and I did. And I've taught people since the way is balance. The way is eating and being done with it. And that's another thing I've been famous for saying. I can have it, just not now, is another. Let the pattern, Stephen Raphael, in your interview with him, mentioned this. You let the pattern do the work for you. When you get set with fasting, you want to set up a pattern that you can recreate every day. So my meal time today, it's changed a number of times over the years, but it is 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. And so I have a good 4 hours, and any time in there, I'll have my meal. My meal will consist of one good helping of whatever I want, usually a very plant-based meal, but it doesn't have to be. It can be fast food. It can be anything I want. When I'm alone, I'll have legumes and rice and fruit and something like stir fry, because it's easy and it's cheap. And that's how I roll on a day-to-day basis. But that's the system that you set up to make it so that there is only what you default to. So you have a system where you have to get rid of all the food in your pantry and buy something new. You can't, then you're playing the dieting game. And I have videos on that. The dieting game is when you do this thing where you say, I've got to change. You get psyched up. I've got to go out there and I've got to try to find a way to buy all this new stuff. I have to go and learn that I can't have carbs anymore. I can't have this. In my opinion, that's the worst way you can go. You want to make peace with the food that is around you, because it's one of my cardinal rules. You will eat what is around you. You will not be in a situation where, unless you're in New Guinea and you have a garden across the world where only certain things are available. So if you want to supplement, if you want to eat a certain way, that's up to you, but you have to make it sustainable. Otherwise, you're not going to succeed.
I wanted to go back to, you said that you experienced a plateau, or actually several plateaus, one about 6 weeks long. Can you explain, was your consistency still spot on, and it was just, is it just something that happens with your body from time to time, do you think?
Yes, your body, as you continue to, we've all spent years gaining weight. So when you spend years gaining weight, your body gets comfortable with you at a certain weight. And so I make the analogy of a CEO in downsizing when it's time to lose weight. Because I'm in the business world, the CEO, doesn't want to cut back on, doesn't want to get rid of his labor, because, hey, the seasons come and go. You're going to have periods where business gets low, and then you're going to have periods where business gets high. So you don't want to get rid of all your staff. And in this analogy, your staff is your fat. So how do you convince your body, your CEO, to downsize and say, we have to get rid of all of this? Well, you have to be consistent. You have to be, you have to have a fail-safe where you don't mess up. So I was completely consistent, and I was determined enough to say, I'm not going to cheat. I allowed myself at first one cheat day a month, and I say cheat day, it was just one large unregulated OMAD meal of any stuff I wanted. But I said, still, that's not cheating. That's managing differently. So I allowed that, and I realized that if you keep consistent, your body's going to realize that CEO is going to realize I have to downsize because we can't keep all of this on here. So what does your body do? It starts to burn your storage. The longest plateau was about 6 weeks. And I've had people, I rarely have I ever had anyone longer than 6 weeks. And I'm working with women who are PCOS, hypothyroid, really big ladies who've had a horrible hand dealt with them in terms of their thyroid. So these are people who really resist. And a lot of the people who come to me and pay for my ultimate program are people who are really in a low spot. So we get a blood panel, we get everything, and we approach OMAD from a more scientific perspective. But consistency remains the issue with everybody. Usually my experience with people who can't maintain, it's a psychological thing because they're used to feeling productive when they're full, which is the mistake. You cannot allow yourself to feel productive full. You have to be productive empty. You have to realize that empty is the new full. You're more happy when you're empty. You get more done. And every one of us knows how it feels to pig out and feel regret and feel disappointment. You let yourself go. You have to learn to be productive and find your strength, your magic moment when you're empty. You realize you don't need food. But until you make that switch, which takes up to 6 weeks, until you make that switch, it doesn't happen. And that's why I tell everyone, give it 6 weeks. Give OMAD 6 weeks to decide it's not for you. I get people to contact me and they say, oh, it's not working. And I say, how long have you done it? They say 3 days. That's not enough time. Even Wolverine can't. Even Wolverine doesn't have the genetics to adjust that fast, I don't think. So you give yourself time to adjust to eating once, and then you have to move on to other activities, which is very hard for some foodies who contact me. They love to tinker around food, and the hard part of that is they're always thinking about food. You want to think less about food. You want to eat and then think about kids, work, or and it's hard when you don't have a lot to do, which is why what you talk so much about, therapeutic walking, and that's a great. I recommend everybody get some sunlight a day and walk. Start with 30 minutes a day. 2 weeks later, up it to an hour. 2 weeks later, up it to an hour and a half, and then finally 2 hours. And then, if you're in good enough shape to keep a consistent walk, I recommend a headset and like an iPod or your phone, and listen to audiobooks. So get smarter at the same time. Kill two birds with one stone. Make a routine that you can keep with. Eat the type of foods that you enjoy, and so you won't feel like you're in rabbit food mode and you have to struggle to feel normal. Don't do that, because most people do not succeed who change their diet too early. If you're going to change your diet, and you will eventually, let that be something that comes naturally. I started having, when I was 8 months into OMAD, I started craving strawberries. I've never craved fruit. I hated fruit. I would eat, when I started OMAD, I was eating gas station burritos and Chinese and Mexican and pizza. This stuff was horrible. But I knew that if I took 4 pieces of pizza and put it on a plate and got a glass of juice, put 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar, I would lose weight all the same, and it was true. So let your body signal. You'll start feeling different as the longer you do it. And then pretty soon your body will adjust you in the way that so that you won't have deficiencies, so that you'll stay afloat. And sometimes I deal with women with hormonal irregularities and whatnot. We do some intuitive eating. We do some what are you craving, and we usually can find that there's a simple answer down the road.
This go around for you, because you've tried other things in the past, different diets and everything. Was there a mindset shift that happened for you, or what was it that was changed this time?
I've already alluded to it briefly. I decided that my goal now was I was willing to call. And before, I was looking for ways to not be hungry. When I did Atkins in the, what was it, 1998, I did Atkins. My wife and I at the time both did. Uh, and I never felt so bad in my life. I had breath like a garbage scowl. I had a headache that would not go away. I nearly had a wreck. I nearly crashed because I was just so unalert. I did not adjust, and I gave it about a month and a half, and I did not switch over. That's why I'm a high carb person by nature. But I felt so terrible, and I didn't lose any weight. All of that, I didn't lose any weight, and I have. But what changed from then? When I decided I was ready to pay the cost, and I realized that my goal was united. I said that I definitely can't get fatter. So I have a video on this called the At Least of OMAD. At least I won't get fatter. At least my clothes will fit. At least, I have a whole bunch of things. When you get to that point when you're ready to make a deal, you're ready to lose. When you get to that point that you're ready to transform, that you're ready to make changes, you're at the right place of mind. When you're at the point where what others think, which is a big one. I know too many people, they're social eaters. This gets back into the communication types. A glad personality, someone who's a networker by nature, has a hard time saying no because they don't want to disappoint everybody around them. You have to be willing to eat for you. You're not eating for anybody else. You're eating for you. So if you don't need a cake or you don't need to eat twice because you've already eaten, I have a video on that. It's called the EDS principle. Storing your food, declaring it, saying thanks, saying, yeah, I'll get to this. I'm going to enjoy this, but not right now. You have to have that strength. Otherwise, life will always throw something in the way. And of course, one of the hugest problems that people have is running into crises in their life. Some people are stress eaters. They eat because they don't get what they want. So if they get demoted or they lose their job or their child disowns them or their kid marries someone they don't approve of, they go into crisis mode and they say, well, if I can't have this, I deserve a cake. And I deserve a night of potato chips. I would do that. I would do entire nights of potato chips and burritos. And I would do, I used to drink. I don't drink. I don't believe in drinking anymore. I used to drink, and I would put about beers and then go to sleep. So I have all those covered, all that, and I would justify it to myself, saying, if I didn't get this, then I deserve this. You can't think that. You can't eat to celebrate, which is another thing I did. People eat because of stress. They eat because of boredom. They eat to celebrate. They say, well, it's time to celebrate. It's not time to think. My best friend's cousin's brother's roommate is coming over, and we need to use the time. If that is your thinking, you will not succeed because somebody will always come over. Somebody's wife or dog will always die. And you'll say, well, I need to eat comfort right now because I'm disappointed. I get so many people that tell me that. They contact me and they say, well, I'm going to start OMAD, but it's going to be after next week because my brother's coming down. We're going to celebrate. Hold on now. If you will not start today taking control, you're going to run into plenty of trouble because there's always going to be something in life come up. So to answer your question, that is my mindset. That's what I was willing. I was willing to be moderately hungry to gain a goal. If you're not willing to count the cost, you're not going to survive. It will not come easy. You should not look for butter coffee to try to quench your hunger. You should. It's one. Find something that works. It's another thing to look. If you find something that works that helps with hunger, like beverages that I talk about, that's fine. But if you decide that you have to have it, you're not going to succeed because there'll come an afternoon where you don't get to eat fast food. There'll come a day where something will happen. You will work too long, and you will decide to say, I need to break down. If that's your mindset, you're going to fail.
So do you face any challenges still with weight loss or just maintenance? Is there anything that still gets to you?
No, not for weight loss. Once you realize how easy it is to keep doing it, the hardest part is honestly to stop because it was so easy for me to keep going. And the only times I ever splurged were tactical splurges where I knew I was in control. So it's like I said, technically not a splurge, not really. But the challenges have come letting go in my identity of being the guy who always eats once. So I had to realize at some point there's nothing wrong with eating twice sometimes. There's nothing wrong with having days where it's okay to enjoy the week. Because if you keep doing OMAD too long, and I have people contact me about this, and they say, They say, I'm eating, I'm getting too thin. What do I do? Well, here's where you have to set your ego aside and you have to say, I know how to take control. You can do that again. Once you have the knowledge, you can do that again. So if I find that I'm gaining weight, then I can cut back again. But the key is balance. So you're going to have to reestablish. You'll face this soon. You'll get to a point where you ride the high of fasting for, I rode it for 2 years, and then pretty soon it's just like anything else. I don't think about it anymore. This email, I got some emails yesterday, but this email I received from you last night was, it got me revisiting all of that. I forgot how I feel sometimes. I have to think about how I was at the second month of fasting, how I felt that month, and the third month. And this is old news for me. So eventually you'll get to a point where this will be old hat and you will have moved on. Mm-hmm. And right now my challenge is, as I get older, putting on muscle, because I want to make sure as I get older I'm not too thin. This shirt is an XL shirt and it's big. I want to make sure that I keep my calories high enough so that I'm gaining legitimate weight. I try to work out an hour a day now. I try to with heavy weights. Dealing with hypothyroid. I was diagnosed at 41 with hypothyroid, Hashimoto's. That's a challenge. My body temperature doesn't regulate now as well as it used to. For those who would ask, it was not brought on by OMAD. Most people who do OMAD have no problems with thyroid function. That's a question I get. My whole family, their thyroid quit at 41. Everybody in my family, and my brother's now about to face the same thing. But to answer your question, my challenge is moving on, and I'm good with that. Accepting that the scale is not your be all or end all. So it doesn't really matter what the scale says. It takes a while to understand that when you're losing weight, because you learn to say, I'm going to be under here. I'm going to be under here. Pretty soon you don't care. Right. And you realize that there's more to life than eating. There's more to life than fasting. Intermittent fasting is not a cure. It's not a cure-all. It's not a catch-all. You may have to adjust to your own life. And when I coach someone, that's what I tell them.
So what is one piece of advice you would give somebody who's currently, they're on their weight loss journey? What is the best advice you would give them?
Okay, I have a few. Thanks for that question. I have a few here for you. Number one, don't start eating when you are ravenous. I have a video on the 5-minute window. Give yourself, if you're too hungry and you're about to sit down to start eating your one meal a day, give yourself a 5-minute buffer. You just set your phone to about 5 minutes and make yourself calm down. The more in control you are when you're eating, the better you will be long term and the better you will lose. If your insulin is really high and you're hungry, you want to get it back down. Number two, don't get rid of food groups. I do not recommend going purely vegan or purely carnivore or purely this or that. I think it's a terrible idea. I eat a 90-10 ratio, carbs and starches versus animal fats. I do a very plant-based routine. I don't want to call it vegan because I'm not a vegan by way of the way I value ethics of animals, which is what vegan is. But I'm plant-based very heavily. That's something that has developed. It's not something the way it is. Don't get rid of any food groups. Don't worry about calorie counting at first. Just try to limit yourself to an approximate 1-plate rule. You can count calories if you want, but don't obsess about it. Next, count your hunger waves. This is important. When you're going through the day and you're adjusting, you're going to realize that you're not as hungry as long as you think or as often as you think. You'll get it to about 5 to 7 waves of hunger. Stop and count them and notice how long they last when you're adjusting. And you're going to realize it's all in your head. Hunger is all in your head. Next, let your diet, I kind of touched on this, let your diet improvement come naturally. Don't think I'm going to sell all the food and get rid of all, or give my neighbor all the food and start doing a new eating routine. Just be natural with it, and you're going to find that if you're hungry for pizza or Chinese, go out and get it, but then stop. And there's no negotiating that. When it is your time to eat, it is your time to eat. When it is not, it is not. 5 are next on the list here. I think I've misnumbered some of them. Don't over prioritize calorie counting. I touched on that. There is more to life than OMAD. So when you're done, stop thinking about it. Do other things. Next, start owning your meals day by day. Start planning. And then this is when you start taking more control. You realize it's fun to play around with the budget. Start eating the way that is cheapest. Most people don't realize you can go a whole week on rice and beans and some bread and butter. You can have that and then a juice. You could go to Walmart and get that for just a little bit. Remember the one plate rule, but then here again, remember your own human experience, because remember your schedule is to say here. Remember your schedule. Your schedule will differ from someone else. Pick a time that is the most social and the most practical for you. You do not want to be in a situation where you're forcing yourself to eat. You want to do what kind of comes after. There's nothing wrong with being hungry 2 hours before your meal or 3 or 4, but you should not be out of control, because you should be aiming for regimented adaptation. You don't want to be out of control. So that's the fact. Highly disorganized list there for tips if you're getting started.
Well, thank you, Joe, so much. Is there any question that I didn't ask you that you really wish I would have asked you?
Ooh, that's good. That's good. No, let me just share. The older you are, if you're 40 or older, you need to get a blood panel every year, a full blood panel every year that gets your A1C, your C-peptide, your all of your endocrine panel, your blood levels. Look for things. Men should have their prostate checked. Women, breast cancer screenings. All of that is in order. My coaching is more in depth than, of course, we're just kind of going over the nuts and bolts here that are entry level. Be honest with yourself and understand that for every season, Solomon said this, every season, there's a time and a season for everything. You'll be at a phase of life where you will have to adjust and you will have to change your routine. Accept that. Accept that everything worth doing is worth doing well. Stop playing the dieting game. Stop being in the middle of doing something and then changing to 2 or 3 different diets, which is what a lot of people who contact me do. They say they're trying keto 1 week, and then 3 days later they're trying vegan, and then they're trying. Stop playing that. Stop doing that, because it results in nothing but hurt and frustration. And you have the power to take control. And when you take control of your eating, and when you master self-control, you'll get what's called hunger high. And this I talk about, where we talk about what it feels to be focused and to be driven and to be clear and to have a purpose, and you'll get up every day and you'll put your feet on the ground and you'll be ready to rock. It takes a while to develop that for different people, but about a month in, 6 weeks in the fasting, you start to focus and you start to get motivated. Put that to work for you, but then at the end of the day, realize you don't want to trade yourself out from bronze shackles into gold. And that's my description of people who focus too much on dieting. You don't want to, go from one extreme to the other. So right. That's about it.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Joe. I mean, I think people will really get a lot out of this interview. If people would like to connect with you, what's the best way they can do that?
They can do that through OMAD, OMAD.info. And that will take you to the main site. And there's a Let's Talk tab there where you can go down and just scroll down and talk to me. And I do have various coaching programs there. Or you can go to forums.omad.info, and you can just, if you don't want to get involved, you just kind of want to follow other OMADers who are at different stages of their journey. You can jump in, create an account, say hi, track your macros if that's your thing, and your micros if you want to through MyFitnessPal, and then jump over to my forums and you can get involved and you can talk to men and women who have, like I said, been there and done that. And you can get involved. I do have coaching programs available for those who need extra help. And I'm pretty reachable. So thank you so much.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Joe. I really do appreciate you being here.
You bet. You have a great day.
Thanks. You too.